Welcome to the Marriage Workshop, Part 3. Yesterday, we discussed the boundaries list, and everyone was so excited to see that list and compare it with the ones that applied to their marriage. I got a lot of compliments. Wow, what an amazing concept to compile such a list into one space. Let me just give you a word of caution here. Try not to overwhelm your spouse with too many at one go. It can make them feel quite hopeless if it's too long. And if the spouse can keep the boundaries, it's about 50% of the way to having shalom bias. It's not everything. Here's the thing. You can get all these boundaries kept, but you still may not be able to get your needs met, okay? And it's like that watering of the plant concept that we discussed. The boundary breakers can cause the harm like poison, and not getting your needs met can cause neglect. Both will kill the plant. Okay, so I want to go back to yesterday's class where we were discussing couple number 1, and we were discussing how they ended up divorcing because the man had a super intense and demanding personality with an insatiable sexual drive. He felt there was nothing wrong for a religious man to watch inappropriate things on his smartphone. Plus, he was quite aggressive with his bad mitos. And his wife had a very long list of complaints against him, which we read on that boundaries list, which was about, 30 things. They had married kids by now, and the wife told me that from the day they got married, she felt totally consumed in the bedroom by him and shut down. She said she tried to keep up with him, but it was exhausting, and it was never enough, and it was never intense enough, and it was never long enough. And she always just felt wiped out. And he had been involved in porn before they got married, and she did not know that was a part of his package. So his brain was already perverted by that filth, and he expected his wife to behave and perform in the same way. You might go, really? Oh, really? I find this happening quite often, unfortunately, with some of the couples I work with. So for her, there was no room for her to explore her pure feminine desires. She's a sensitive, beautiful soul, and she dedicated her life to trying to make this man happy. She really did love him underneath all this. That was the sad part. And I find this is a very big issue that I want to discuss now. And this is navigating the boundaries and needs of intimacy. Okay, so this is one of the areas of getting your needs met, but it really plays out in so many different ways. So Hashem very wisely infused this concept of nida into the marriage so that a woman can get a break. Most women feel grateful for that time out for a few weeks. During that 2-week period, the divine plan is that the couple is supposed to connect with each other on an emotional level in a way that makes the woman feel loved and appreciated, other than for her body. But what ends up happening is many times during that break, the men just take the opportunity to check out and ignore their wives. They want nothing to do with her. The woman feels disconnected, ignored, dismissed, definitely not loved. Nick Night arrives and he's back in her arms, expecting intimacy, and the woman's just not excited. And it's difficult for a woman to feel dumped for 2 weeks and then to be expected to show up with her feminine sexual energy in full gear that he craves. This is an educational breakdown and teaching men about this. But it's a deeper issue that's just being taught in a very technical detail. So men need to understand how this plays out and its devastating consequences if they aren't mindful during this nida period. Many men are emotionally shut down on the best of days, and many women are sexually shut down, and it can become a whole tangled, dysfunctional mess. And this is happening in our communities behind closed doors, and I believe it's the underlying fuel for so many divorces. There is a lot of needless suffering going on here. I was one of 14 women on a panel to discuss how to tackle this sensitive topic within our beautiful communities. And it's a lecture with golden nuggets of wisdom that basically gives a woman permission to enjoy intimacy according to halacha. with skills. It really explains feminine pleasure in such a pure and holy platform, the way that Hashem intended it to be, because it infuses a marriage with his shlinah, with connection between the couple, with bonding and mutual pleasure. Otherwise, it's just a technical act that eventually breeds resentment, rejection, and often divorce. I find a lot of men and women are taught the technical details of this act, and many are brainwashed that there is something not tznius about giving your wife pleasure, or from the woman's side, it's not dignified and it's shameful to lower yourself into that erotic space. I've heard this over and over again. It actually is just mind-boggling. So many women just block their husbands from even trying or to shut that whole part of themselves down. And it's just one story after the next. Over the years that I've been working in this field, I do talk a lot about this in my book, Challahs and Colors. I go give over many of the stories that I've just heard, which it's just across the board. It doesn't matter which version of Judaism you come from. And if you're interested in the summit, I suggest that you purchase it. It's a couple $100, but it's worth it. And it's a whole new world to open your eyes in this world if you're struggling here. So reach out to me if you want the link. So let's go back to case study number 1. Okay, the couple number 1. When they resumed intimacy after 2 years of separation, we built love and we built trust, and they were both on cloud 9 when they finally resumed their intimacy. And I was, oh, this is great. This is amazing. This is going to work. And their reunion had all the fireworks and passion that the wife dreamed up on her wedding night, which she never got. However, it soon turned into a burden again to keep him satisfied every night, and his inability to control that part of their marriage eventually destroyed it again. And then I found out that they got divorced, and I was like, what? I was talking to him and I said, I'm sure you're going to get remarried because he's a young guy, he's rich, he's good looking, he's everything that a woman wants. I said, but be sure to find a woman who matches your sexual needs, or you know what? And make sure she also knows you do porn, because otherwise you're going to burn through marriage number 2. I don't sugarcoat stuff when I work with people because I just feel like there's no point at this stage. We've just got to get to the point. So trying to come up with sexual boundaries that work for both spouses can sometimes be super challenging. There is something called sexual needs. It's real. And according to the Gemara, it's even, this is according to a woman. That's what the man has to perform according to his wife's needs. That's assuming she's got needs. Unfortunately, women don't, because they've been shut down either by their communities, their teachers, or the trauma of not being prepared for what's coming on their wedding night. And it becomes a terrorizing experience that many women dread for many years, even after menopause. I think part of the issue is people got married way younger in the olden days when their hormones kicked in, and it was just more natural and less controlled. And people are expected to suppress all that until adulthood. And parents used to educate their children, and they just let nature take its course. Now it's outsourced to professionals, often creating unnatural programs and fears that are not Judaism. When people get married, there's often a lot of dysfunction, and it just does not flow the way that Hashem intended it. If they don't have a really good mentor or coach who is on top of this, or to help them navigate the hiccups along the road, it often does not get better for years. And this is where a lot of the needs start getting lost in the mix here. I know this is a very delicate topic. So people don't feel comfortable talking about it. I got that. But this is where we are. Couples can suffer through really bad intimacy for many years for no reason. It becomes bland and technical, where women feel their husbands they're just the husband's vessel. I even heard a few times the word bathroom being used. Can you imagine? I was shocked. A couple times I've heard this term. It's so sad to hear these cases because clearly this is not how Hashem intended it. Right? The wife shouldn't feel this is just another thing to click off her to-do list. Truth be told, the intimacy is supposed to be for her for the wife's needs, right? It's part of the husband's marriage contract. And that the Torah, it's a Torah deresa. He is charged with gifting his wife the pleasure that makes it all worth it. It's a given that the man gets his needs met pretty much every time, pretty effortlessly. But a woman can take an hour or longer to get her from the time she finally relaxes to getting her heart to open. The Gemara says that a man needs to be with his wife as much as she needs, which we already discussed that. Well, this is assuming that she's got a need. If she doesn't, it is considered a sexual dysfunction. She's supposed to control the tempo of the bedroom, but this is where a lot of shalom bias issues appear. When we get into our needs list, the boundaries and needs can be entangled and often dysfunctionally entangled to the point that the couples have no more intimacy and there's zero needs being met, either sexually or emotionally. And many women give up and it becomes a technical chore. The man may feel rejected most of the time. And when she finally says yes, I hear from the man, it's just not worth the effort. It's really poor quality intimacy for both. So where do they start to fix this? It's good to hire a coach who has success in this department, because there's a lot of really clueless teachers who are giving really bad advice from what I'm hearing, and because they themselves are in the same boat. That is the theme of the takeaway from the Intimacy Summit. Each lady told her story, how awful it was at the beginning, and how they had to work through it. Why is this happening in our communities? Why do people need to suffer and work through this, even though they were educated by competent Kala and Chassan teachers, apparently? So I'm in the process of starting a marriage task force with a group of professionals. I want it to become a decree before the couples can just run to get divorced. They need to go through a task force program, because most couples getting divorced should not be. Most marriages are fixable with the right people on the team. If we energy test stuff, we can help them often. I have a whole class on this topic on MoodTek.com. Save your marriage in the free classes. Many couples I've worked with have not been together in years. They have given up in that department. Basically, they're just roommates, and often just technical roommates with no love. Last week, I worked with a woman who admitted to me, I wish my husband would die. A frum woman married to a man who learns Torah all day. This is not normal. What is going on here? She says, we don't fight, we just don't talk. She is so enraged and angry with her husband's inability to meet her needs. He doesn't show up for her at all when it comes to intimacy, or basically anything that she wants. I explained this over and over to him, she says. She finally moved into the other bedroom and just cut him off. So he keeps my boundaries, but he won't give me what I need. So what do I do? So I checked her husband. He needs about 30 sessions to sort him out. That's like $6,000 worth of work. Why? Because his emotional centers are shut down. His emotional IQ is super low. His heart is shut. His auditory processing issues are not working. His parents were Holocaust survivors, and he inherited a lot of emotional pain. It's not safe to love. Broken heart trauma. I mean, the guy is one tangled mess. So she says, he's a good man in theory. He's trying to check all the boxes, but he's a religious robot. Non-emotional, non-sexual, except for the 2 minutes he wants to get his needs met, then he falls asleep on me. So her default solution, she has shut him down because she feels so violated every time he wants to be with her. So, and also she says he's not willing to do what he's supposed to do to get me in the mood and warm me up and give me any pleasure. It's all about him. I'm not being his bathroom anymore, she says. Sorry. And she can't divorce him because she has a few kids to marry off, and she would be disowned from her family because it's known in their family that no one gets divorced. You just suck it up. They have a perfect family name. So she doesn't want to invest in this marriage anymore. She said, we've already spent thousands of dollars on therapy for a while, and we couldn't get him to first base. And on top of that, then he expected me to resume intimacy with him since he agreed to go to therapy. So she said, no, I'm done. I give up. And she labeled him as emotionally retarded. It's not his fault. That's the problem. It's not that he doesn't want to. It's just that he can't give her what she's requesting because he's so shut down. And it's really sad because they're young. They'll probably be together another 40 years in this Gehenna marriage. Why? It sort of defeats the whole point of being religious. She has all this hatred in her heart, sending her husband these evil intent and curses. She will take all that bad energy, the bitterness, the rage, the lack of forgiveness with her to the next world. All that energy does not disappear once you die. And I'm not sure she's thinking about that. So, how is this scenario, which I'm finding more common than I realized, to exist in our religious from communities? I'll tell you why. Because this topic is still quite taboo, and people just suffer in silence on top of that. And then when there are solutions like what we have to offer, the rabbis come along and they say, well, they discourage people from hiring therapists like me, even though they don't understand what we do. They don't understand the power of what energy work can do to repair these kinds of situations. People think, oh, it's just my lot in life. It's not true. This is mostly fixable for the most part once we clean up people from an energy perspective, assuming you have basically a good person who wants to do the right thing. Keep in mind, this is mostly energy based, but that person also needs training or to be retrained. I had another lady reach out to me also a couple weeks ago, and she had some health issues that took me to resentments that she harbored towards her husband. I dug a bit into it, and I found that she had to wait until after midnight to be with her husband because he was taught as halacha that you can't be together with your wife until after midnight. Okay, that was just what he was taught, and so that's what he does. So she would either have to wait up for him, and she was so exhausted, or he would wake her up to do the act, which of course she got nothing out of it. And she just had a baby a few months ago, and she was struggling with sleep to begin with. She just thought this was normal, that everyone suffered like this. And she felt so guilty for so much bitterness she felt towards her husband because he's such a good, righteous man, wanted to do the right thing. So there's a lot of really strange and unnatural customs going on in our communities that are just devastating intimacy and marriages at the core level. And I speak about this in my upcoming book called Colors and Colors, where I take a deep dive into this topic with real case studies. So the good news is that there are many couples that are getting the help that they need, Baruch Hashem. Unfortunately, many have no clue even where to start to find help or even realize that there is hope for improvement. So let's just get to the needs, the other types of needs that people may have. So we spoke about the sexual needs. We also have emotional needs, right? This is another big issue. So some couples might have intimacy nailed, that's fine. And other people, the emotional department is disaster, right? And he's looking at her and she's looking at him, and they're just looking for some kind of a confirmation that I'm okay, right? Like a confirming smile, just acknowledging the person's alive and that they're okay. So an emotional need would be, I need you to give me a smile a few times a day. Just look at me and smile at me, okay? That might seem like very strange, but that is really important. Say hi when I come home. Look at me, get off the phone, talk to me, acknowledge me. Say thank you when I make you dinner, right? I call it love bombing 5 to 10 times a day. That is, you're looking for things to do to connect with your spouse. If not, we're like two boats that are constantly separating by the current. By the end of the day, we're over here. So we have to look for ways to weave our relationship on an emotional level back together. You got to fake it till you make it. We need to ensure on a daily dose that this is happening, not just, wait 2 weeks and then try to repair it on mikvah night, right? Going out of your way to be nice, giving compliments, encouragement, texting, buying a nice gift, just being a mensch. The next one is financial needs. Ooh, this is a big one that comes up. You need to come up with a game plan, and often you may need a professional to sit down and create a budget that everybody has to agree to. And this is way too big of a topic that I'm not going to get into now. The next one is intellectual needs. Sometimes people are just not on the same page when it comes to their intelligence. One spouse might be super book smart, while the other one is more street smart. And when they try to discuss topics, it does not go well. The breakdown is vast and the communication just gets shut down because they are not understanding each other. So the best thing is to try to see your spouse in the greatest possible way for what they bring to the table and understand he might be blocked in understanding your perspective. The worst thing is you let it erode your respect for each other, or you try to prove to the other one how they don't know what they're talking about. This can really create major problems, especially if the man is like super organized and methodical, and the wife is more easygoing and non-structured and messy. She may not be able to keep up with the home in the way that he wants, and he may be always upset with her, and she feels very unsafe. And again, this is crossing over into boundaries and needs. So the best thing is to try to explain your needs to your spouse. And this can also be super triggering, especially if your spouse can't process what you're saying or they get shut down in the process. And then their processing disorder kicks in. And by the way, processing disorders can come and go if the person's getting triggered. Okay, the next thing is could be chores around the house, right? I need you to help out more. The wife will say, I feel wiped out. And the husband may feel, well, it's my job to learn and to go work, right? And to show up for dinner and then back to learning. He's asking, why is she asking me to help her? That's a waste of my time. And that's her job, right? And the woman can go, well, I'm also working. So where's the balance here? So it's little things like this can play out when it comes to needs, and identifying these needs is probably more complicated than dealing with the boundaries, but they are equally important. So tomorrow we're going to be discussing communication and how to tie all this together. Okay, so that's really it for the presentation. I wanted to be able to take questions on what we discussed and see if anybody has anything that they want to bring up. Give me 1 second. Just pause the recording. Hi, Deborah, go ahead.
Hi there. I was wondering, you were talking about emotional needs. What happens if the spouse can't meet the emotional needs? So you want, let's say, eye contact, but they just can't do it because of their genetic makeup. How do you get those needs met?
So sometimes you just can't. And it's like if your husband was blind, okay, you wouldn't expect him to be able to see, right? So some of it is just being okay with that and understand, not personalize it, and he's just not able to do it. And he has to make up for it in a different way. That is possible sometimes that people just aren't able to look at you in that way. And I understand it's so painful. But we do have what I call, disabilities, emotional inabilities or whatever. And it is coming to terms with our spouse's disabilities or inabilities. If they can make up for it in other ways, then it's not so painful. If they're just flat out not giving you anything, then that just, is okay. See, another thing that is wrong with you.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, you're welcome. Okay, let's go to Brenda. Okay, hi, we have Shani. Go ahead.
Yeah, hi. So when it's regarding the first question that came on, about people getting their emotional needs met, and um, when it's an issue of emotional IQ. So I'm saying sometimes I don't have experience working with this yet, but like when you can raise it up, that will affect the ability of the spouse to meet it. But are you saying that sometimes even when you get that sensor working energetically, that still people just aren't always able to be available that way? Like,
So it's a great question that Deborah was bringing up earlier. And the thing is like this, sometimes it's difficult for us to fix it. We need to outsource it to somebody else who is, sort of more expert on this. My experience shows me over and over again, I've had probably at least 100 clients like this, where the men or the women have the same problem sometimes. We're really, really shut down. And by fixing this on them, it fixed it, but then what happened is they got triggered and it looked like it wasn't fixed, but it just got shut down again. Because keep in mind, the brain works, it's all electrical, and it will short out if there's a perceived danger. So it could be that maybe in, in another situation where it looks like it wasn't getting fixed. It was fixed, but then 5 minutes later, the brain shorted again. So there are triggers that are playing that are, knocking this stuff offline again. Same thing with the heart. We could open the heart, but if the criticism's coming in, he's going to shut his heart down just automatically. It looks like it's not fixing it, but it could be a combination of the triggers that are playing out with the emotional IQ getting knocked offline or the heart getting shut down, or who knows what's going on. But most of it, from my experience, is energy based. Now, some men have bad middos. Some men have avoidant personality. They just don't want to, they're not interested in getting involved in this process. And somebody asked a question earlier, how do you know when it's time to give up? And the question is, it's up to you. Like, if you can take the good, everyone's got some good. It's not everyone's all bad. It's how much bad versus how much good, is actually in this marriage. And if you can focus in on the good and start love bombing your spouse, oftentimes, believe it or not, this stuff just really clears up. There's a book called, it's called The Surrendered Wife, I believe. I think she's changed the title. But basically staying in your lane and just doing what you've got to do and not personalize your husband's nonsense is really what it's about. And to a certain extent, it's a really great concept. A lot of women have changed their whole marriage by just changing their mindset about, I'm not fixing my husband, I'm fixing myself, and whatever he gives me is fine. But what ends up happening, unfortunately, what I found, at least 4 clients that have, followed her method, is they're not getting their needs met. And she really doesn't go into, other than just hinting, well, I've already hinted like 20 times he's not getting the point. How do we directly, come in and get what we need? So it's really a balance, and there's no, this way or that way. It's just every couple is different.
Yeah.
Did I answer your question? Okay.
Somewhat, yeah. Thank you.
Okay, you're welcome. Hello, Shauna from Belgium. Go ahead.
Number one, thank you, thank you, thank you. Beautiful knowledge, beautiful nuggets, amazing. Every college teacher should please give it over. Every mother give it over. Okay, not every mother can give it so, but over, because the knowledge, wow, wow, wow. And it's not that I'm new to it. It's beautiful. I think number one, whatever you said boils down communication skills, how to say it over it, that maybe you could give over nicely. And I've read The Empowered Wife, just to tell you some knowledge. I've read a background story. For me, it really changed me because I didn't get it 20 years ago. So The Surrendered Wife, and the second book is called The Empowered Wife, gave me direction. Yeah, so you're right with what you're saying, but for me, it gave me direction. It's like, what to say, what not to say to your husband, stay on your lane. It really was a great book to read. But what you're giving is amazing. And I just want to thank you so much. Beautiful. And I'm so excited. And we should all help all the marriage in Clarissurel. Thank you.
Amen. Amen. And I tell people, I have the best job. Honestly, I love what I do because we literally see these broken marriages and we see them blossoming and they're on cloud 9 and they're so happy. And for the most part, they stay there. That's one thing I learned though, is I can't, like, once a couple's in this space, I do need to check in with them periodically to make sure they're still, doing well, because things can break apart so fast if people just, give up and go back to their old ways. Okay, so any other questions before we stop for today? So tomorrow's going to be on communication. I believe we have a special guest. His name is Penny Herman, and he specializes in imago therapy. And he's going to be giving over some quick tips on how to communicate and get what you need. Okay, have a great day, everybody. Thank you. Bye.